Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Rasanello. And once more, dear friends, we are going into why. I think you might agree with me.
Oh yes, lots to talk about tonight.
It's been a full week. Just wanted to start out, as always, giving a shout out to all our supporters, particularly all of you who always join us every week and you share our videos with other people. We're getting a lot of views, and we've opened a lot of lines of communication. So as we've updated you in the past, we're going to be hopefully taking it to the next level very soon. Stay tuned. Also this week, we're proud that we're going to be doing an interview on Wednesday morning with Father Stephen Imbarato. If you don't know him, you're going to be happy that you will know him after our interview. And those of you who do know that he is not only we're in the breach. Father Imbarato is storming the machine gun nest. Okay, he's beyond the breach, and he's a good guy to talk to because he is literally, particularly when it comes to the issue of abortion and life, he is right there, and he's a courageous man. And we're going to be doing an interview with him. It'll be Joe and Joe's first ever interview.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, it won't be live, but we're gonna tape it, and then we're gonna clean it up, and then we're gonna put it on our page, and hopefully you all will share it. And we have other interviews that we're currently in the process of lining up because we want to provide more content for all you loyal listeners and viewers. Also, Joe Campo in Brooklyn. As always, we thank him for his support. Jonathan Ross up in Toronto, Canada, with HolyFaith Media. We want to thank him. And again, like I said, all of you who are standing behind us. So yeah, let's get into this interesting. This has been a crazy week. I mean, insanity is the only. We talk about all the things being insane out there. Insanity is the only way to describe this week. I mean, if you're even checking the TV for a second after Thursday night, you're seeing what we're going to be talking about. So where we
and before we get into the quick hit, shout out to Aldo. He's a faithful listener every week. I see your son every day on the train, Aldo. He's a good young man. Joe Romano with Expert Sewers, serving Southern Bergen County. Old friend, use his business. It is small businesses, as Joe reminded me this week, that keep this country great.
That's
and
right.
He's 100% correct. And Roseanne, thank you also for tuning in. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, I just wanted to throw a quick hit. This is something you're probably aware of, but sometimes when you look at the percentages of how people view things, it kind of brings it a little bit more clearer into our vision. As of now, as we all know, tomorrow is Columbus Day, and for Joe Romano, and it's Thanksgiving in Canada. So shout out to Jonathan Ross, because it is Thanksgiving in Canada. It is Columbus Day in the U.S. Okay. 69% of college students support abolishing Columbus Day, replacing it with Indigenous Peoples Day. And 80% of the Ivy League students feel that they should replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Interesting.
Go ahead.
Well,
go
they
ahead.
feel celebrating Christopher Columbus comes with an inherent celebration of genocide, violence, and colonialization.
Genocide, violence, and colonialism. So let that swish that around in your mouth like a fine wine as we continue.
This is why we send our kids to school for $70,000 a year.
Right.
Not to mention, Christopher Columbus had more guts than any person who's criticizing him, sailing across an unknown ocean for days on end in a boat probably not much bigger than our car. So that gets no credit. He discovered a land, and from that, granted, he discovered Jamaica, and he thought it was the Americas. But he was Italian, so I'll kind of let him slide. I'm gonna enjoy my sausage and peppers. Actually, tomorrow I'm gonna make eggplant parmesan.
All right.
To celebrate Christmas.
Celebrate the Italian holiday. I wonder why though. Like it gets. I did read one article where it says, and predominantly celebrated by Italian Americans. Why doesn't everybody celebrate Columbus Day? You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Christopher Columbus. Okay?
And he had guts, big time.
Right.
Think about what he did. He went across the ocean. They didn't even know how long the journey was.
Right.
Think about that, just from a human perspective. So many variables, so many unknowns. That's why he has a holiday.
Right.
That's why he has a holiday.
Right. And this idea of genocide, it's another thing too. Like, especially if you tell, you would imagine, or you would think that kids that go to the Ivy League are pretty smart, right?
Oh, they are smart.
So they throw around these things like, colonialism and genocide and all that. Well, let me ask you this. You want to rename it Indigenous Peoples Day. Which indigenous people? The ones who were persecuted and slaughtered by other indigenous people? Because that's what was going on here before Columbus got here. Before the evil European got here, following the cross of Jesus Christ, which is what Columbus was doing, okay? Because he was spreading the gospel, and he said that in his writings, okay? Which indigenous people are you going to celebrate? The ones that were killing each other, or the ones that were killing another one, or the ones who were the victims of the other group, or the ones who were colonizing another one and taking their land, as Native Americans were doing here?
And raping their women.
And raping their women.
Their children.
Or do those sins not count? Only the evil Christopher Columbus's sins. That's where it's like, if you had a point, okay, we might listen, but you don't have a point. And I say might listen. We're not going to listen. Because because we like to, as you all know, we're not selfish here. Joe and Joe is over, to go watch what other people have to say and where they're getting into it on a much deeper level. Go look at what Mike Knowles has to say when you get a chance, okay? Very good explanation. And he told the one snowflake, he said, you stand on the shoulders of giants. And he went on to talk about, how much of a giant Christopher Columbus is for the same reasons that you're saying. This guy had more guts to do what he did, risking his life for what he knew in his heart. There's land over there, and I know I can get to it this way, and that's what he did. And like I said, none of us would be here, okay? America would never have been founded if Christopher Columbus did not make his voyage. Like you said, JoJo,
that's why I'm making eggplant parmesan tomorrow.
Right. I made take off from work.
And I'm going to like it.
Make chicken parmesan and bring it over, and we're going to celebrate Christopher Columbus. And the reason why we're saying it like this is because we want all the snowflake heads to explode out there, that two jamokes like us are going to celebrate. I mean celebrate the achievements of the man, Christopher Columbus.
Potatoes of the show. This week we posted for our first segment an article which we've alluded to in a number of shows. It's got a lot of views on our Facebook page for the Frontline for Joe and Joe, and I thought we should, actually Joe thought we should go into it a little deeper, because a lot of times we just allude to it. And then it's going to relate to the next segment. It's basically coming from Johns Hopkins. We've said this a number of times. The chief psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins has stated transgenderism is a mental disorder. Now, let me just remind everyone who just heard my voice, Johns Hopkins is the premier medical school in the United States of America.
Right. This isn't a Catholic priest that's doing the study.
Premier medical school in the United States of America. And this is the chief psychiatrist.
What's his name?
His name is Paul McHugh.
Paul McHugh.
Okay, this is what he said. And then after I throw out a little bit of facts, then we'll have our nice discussion. Please feel free to chime in. He basically stated that gender reassignment is biologically impossible. He went on to say...
Could you repeat that?
Absolutely.
Could you repeat that?
Gender reassignment is biologically impossible.
So spoken in layman's North Newark terms, you can't change your sex. Biologically, you cannot change your sex. If you're a man and you go through this, what they're calling gender reassignment surgery, which in more street language, we won't get into it, you know exactly what gets done. You don't become a woman. You cannot bear children. It will never, ever, ever happen. No much how much medical science progresses, if you call any of this progress, okay, you're never going to be able to have someone who is born a male of the species become pregnant and give birth to a child. Also, so it's impossible.
Also, if you think he's some quack at a very fancy school, let me cite another important source. The American College of Pediatrics stated that transgenderism of children is child abuse.
And it is.
The American College of Pediatrics stated that transgenderism is child abuse. Here's my question to you. Why are our public schools promoting it?
That's right.
Why are our public schools, why is a principal looking at an 11-year-old, a grown man, and encouraging that child to transition in America today.
Right, and these are, by the way, and these are the people who are always reminding us we can't listen to religion, we can't listen to the church, we need to listen to science. Well, here's the science.
And
here's the science.
Sources. This is sources. This is not my opinion, by the way. These are not my opinions.
Right.
These are doctors. Obviously, I'll be honest with you, I'll put our medical profession in the United States of America up against any country in the world.
Well, when they act in a very same way and don't have a political agenda, you know, that's driving their science. Obviously, Paul McHugh and others, they don't have a political axe to grind or a cultural axe to grind, okay? They're calling it the way it is based on their scientific studies. That's what they're doing.
Also, just to give you some more background on Dr. McHugh, he's an author of 6 books. He's penned over 125 peer-reviewed medical articles. He wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal. In that article, he said transgender surgery is not the solution for people who suffer, and this is what he called it, a disorder of assumption. Here's some statistics about people who do transition. Again, this is not dogma. These are statistics. Look them up. The suicide rate amongst transgender people who had reassignment surgery. So why do I stress that? These are people who thought that this was going to make them happy. They have a 20 times higher rate of suicide than people who don't, i.e. non-transgender people. 20 times higher.
Right. Also,
70, this is something we've said on a number of shows, but I'm going to repeat it again, and it's going to relate to our next segment, and you're going to see why. This is what McHugh has found in his studies, once again, from Johns Hopkins University. He has stated that 70 to 80% of children who express transgender feelings over time spontaneously lose those feelings.
Spontaneously.
Now, when we say children, this is people who are under 18. These are minors. Why? I'm going to repeat it again. Do adults, men and women, stare children in the face in our public school system and encourage them to transition into the opposite sex when physicians and science is saying otherwise? And we have politicians that are building platforms who Americans are voting for,
right,
most of which believe in some form of a God. It's besides me. I can't even.
Well, when they're being used. Okay, so first of all, you know, any parents who allow any of this mutilation to happen to their child, or to promote the delusion or the disorder that the child has, that parent belongs in jail. We're going to talk about that more in a minute when we get into our next segment. In other words, they belong in jail. These kids, let's face it, below the age of reason, above the age of reason, these kids don't even know what sex is. How does an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old know what a boy know what a girl feels like? How do they know what it means to feel like a girl? They don't even know what it means to feel like a boy. They're not even at puberty yet. So what in them says, well, I know what it means to feel like a boy, but I feel like a girl? They don't have. This is all coming from the outside.
Well, and it's also coming from encouragement from their parents who are deluded, and also adults that are in an administrational role in a school who's whispering in their ear that this is okay.
But I don't understand what these parents think they're going to gain from this. You just gave the statistic. If the suicide rate after this self-mutilation, okay, is 20 times higher, what are you looking forward to? Your child's funeral? Is that what you're like? If you're a 35-year-old parent of a 10-year-old and you allow them to go through this, all right, and by the time they're 20, they kill themselves, all right, and what are you at 45 years old? You want to be the parent who's looking at your child in a casket and say, I encourage them to be free individuals. No, you destroyed that person's life, and that was your child. It was your responsibility to raise that child properly and not allow your child to be used by political parties and the cultural Marxists, which is what you did.
Sadly, they'll rationalize it and say what we're doing here is what killed their child, and that is incorrect because science is backing up what we're saying. You are choosing not to listen to doctors and scientists. Forget about Joe and I. I'm telling you, science, the American Pediatric Society, Johns Hopkins University. This is not, small potatoes.
Well, Dr. McHugh's been peer-reviewed over, 125 times. It's not like he just came up with this study and said, oh, here you go. This is an accomplished scientist. This is what this man does for a living. By the way, you know that because it's always attack the messenger. He'll be attacked too. He probably has already. We probably just missed the story, but I'm sure if we look at it, I'm sure there's a lot of people that attack him, like they attack people who try to do science. They're trying to do science, and the conclusions scientifically that they come up with run up against the cultural Marxist agenda that we're currently facing in this country, which is why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe every Sunday night, 8 o'clock on Facebook Live. Okay, because we're in this fight, and they're gonna attack Paul McHugh as though he's one of us. Well, you and me are commentators. Okay, Paul McHugh's a doctor, and they're gonna attack him too. They'll probably call him a Nazi, a hater, right? But the thing is, again, we have to emphasize this point, Joe. Given this, because this is obviously the truth. This is the tangible results of this of living this lifestyle, of the consequences of having this lifestyle been promoted to you and you follow through on it, is nothing but destruction. Why, if we love people, do we encourage them to lead what's going to be a destructive and probably suicidal existence? Okay, living tortured while they're alive and then finally ending their life. I'm supposed to think that because we speak out against this, that we're haters?
Joe, because people don't have courage.
Well, they don't have
to be accepted. That's what it is. People are afraid to make waves, and they don't have courage. And and that's the truth. People just go along to get along, and and they shut their eyes and shut their front door.
Yeah, well, you know what? But I'm going to get religious on you for a second. Let's try to remember what Jesus Christ said about lukewarm people. Okay, what he said about, if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out of my mouth. I think he used the word vomit. Okay, in other words, that's how bad being lukewarm is. In other words, being in the middle, being indifferent. Indifferent is, well, it's not my kid. But what happens if it is your kid? They will prevent you from taking your kid to the doctor, to a psychologist, to a priest,
how about
to the church, to the
How about the teacher?
Oh, well, they're all in the bag.
I'm just saying. Agenda. And their union is telling them they have to do this. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't live with myself to stare at a 9-year-old or an 11-year-old in the face and encourage them to do that. I quit the job. I do something else. There's no way I could live with myself after doing something like that. Yeah, but and then look at my kids when I come home. But you're my wife.
But you're a man of conscience. Okay, if you look, and we're going to get into it in a minute, at this woman that we're going to get into at this I don't even, what do you want to call it, a circus this week? The town hall, whatever it is,
for
non-heterosexual town hall debate presented by CNN, which is basically the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. Okay, we're getting the woman that's trotting out her 9-year-old daughter, who's now Jacob, 9-year-old, asking Elizabeth Warren, saying or introducing herself as Jacob to Elizabeth Warren, and Elizabeth Warren, hi Jacob,
everyone's
clapping, thunderous applause. You're abusing that child,
and you're using it.
And what are you going to say to that kid in, let's say, 4 years?
How about 20 years?
Well, I don't know what her name is. I know now she goes by Jacob. Let's call her Jacob for a second. What are you going to say to Jacob when Jacob says, you know what, I was just a kid. In other words, now they're past the age of puberty. Okay, I was just a kid. I'm way beyond that. I'm a girl, and I want to date boys. Is that kid going to be a hero then? What's going to happen?
It's a shame. It's just a shame.
It really is.
Well, let's just go to draw a little conclusion on these particular points that we just made. Bottom line, if you're supporting gender reassignment surgery, basically for not just a child, but for an adult, basically you're supporting a mental disorder.
Right.
That's not my words. That's coming from Johns Hopkins. 2, claiming that this is a civil right basically is not supported by science. Once again, not dogma, not religion, science.
Science.
This is not a civil right issue. This is a mental health issue. Don't take my words for it. Take scientists' words for it.
That's right.
Okay, as Joe said, we're going to talk a little bit about this town hall that we basically watched this week. It was on CNN. It was basically the DNC candidates pandering to the non-heterosexual platform. There were a number of points made. Joe alluded to one. I just want to talk about a few of them. I'll start off with a milder one, and we'll lead up to the one that Joe basically just noted. This one was, I thought, mildly humorous, but then it kind of like, if we could get into the weeds on it, we could, explore how basically strange it is regarding how people use pronouns to explain themselves. But Chris Cuomo was joking with Kamala Harris, and he called himself a woman, and this is kind of how it played out. Kamala Harris opens up her segment introducing her pronouns. Now, obviously, she's a woman, a very successful woman, an attorney. She says, "My pronouns are she, her, and hers."
And everybody thunderously applauds.
And Cuomo jokes in response, "Well, mine too." Awkward silence. Kamala Harris jumps in and goes, "All right." Cuomo gets blasted on social media and has to then apologize, which he did.
Let's clarify that, Joe, or let's get a little bit more focused in on that. Groveled. Okay, that's what Chris Cuomo did. Chris Cuomo is in it. Look, Chris Cuomo could probably beat the crap out of me. Okay, so we're not talking about toughness. Chris Cuomo, I just spent a weekend on retreat, and one of the things we talked about, I went on a Catholic men's retreat. One of the things that the retreat coordinator was talking about was the Aristotelian and Thomas Aquinas' view of what it means of feminism. Okay, and people think it's like limp-wristedness, or it's homosexual, or it's kind of like something. It's not. It's just, and there's a whole list of reasons that both Aristotle and Aquinas give, or descriptions that they give of what an effeminate man would be. Chris Cuomo fits that to the bill. Like I said, probably does lift more weights than me. Probably, let's say, physically in a fight, could probably beat the hell out of me. But the bottom line is, Chris Cuomo is an emasculated male. That's what he is. He is a feminized male because he groveled because he made a joke, rather than say, "You know what, lighten up. I made a joke." And really, if your feelings are that offended by the joke, then I really don't want to listen to you, like Joe and I would do. All right, lighten up. We have to listen to all the anti-Catholic nonsense out there. So what is it, Chris Cuomo? You made a joke, big deal, and you groveled at their feet.
He groveled because he makes like $5 million.
Right. He doesn't want to lose position. Chris Cuomo, when Joe and I described the novel 1984, and we took about picture of the boot stomping on the human face. Okay, Chris Cuomo is the one who willingly puts his face under that boot. See, we don't. They're going to have to force that on us. Chris Cuomo groveled to them. In other words, to their agenda, all because he made a stupid joke.
And frankly, he was just being lighthearted.
That's all he was doing.
He had and I'm not a fan of Chris Cuomo, but at the same time, he meant nothing by that. In fairness.
No, I don't think that's my point. He didn't mean anything by it. Okay, he wasn't trying to be hurtful. And objectively speaking, Joe, I don't care what their feelings in the audience were. It was not hurtful. It was not. He made a stupid joke.
That's all.
All right, but he groveled. That's because that's what an emasculated man, a feminized man, does. They grovel.
Well, let's go to the second point I wanted to make. This goes to Beto O'Rourke, and I think this is very telling.
And I'm sorry, Joe. I want everybody there's a couple here, even though we have to listen up to all of it. Listen closely, not just all you Catholics out there. All of you, I know PM's listening in right now. All right, and I'm dear friends with PM. Okay, PM's a Muslim. Okay, he's a Muslim man. And the bottom line is, I want everybody to listen up to what Beto O'Rourke just said, as Joe's about to get into.
He was asked point blank, do you think religious institutions like colleges, churches, or charities, should they lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage? Beto O'Rourke's response was a flat yes.
Yep.
Now, Mr. O'Rourke, you do realize that it's not just the Catholic Church that feels that same-sex marriage is not lawful. Muslims do, Jews do, Christians do. You do realize that all of the above, which I just noted, have charities that help the poor in this country at no cost to the United States government. Let's look at the Catholic Church. I've always said this. Let me first say what my mother used to say. She said, if the Catholic Church shut its doors, you would hear the cries from across the Atlantic Ocean. The Catholic Church is the largest nonprofit organization, like them or not, on the globe. Period. End of story. I've always said this. If I was the Cardinal of New York and the mayor was giving me a hard time, this is how I would handle it. I'd walk into his office. I'd say, do you see this number that I just circled, Mayor? You see this number? That's what I save you every single year in free services from hospitals, schools, nursing homes, charities, soup kitchens, at no cost to you. And you're going to break my chops? You're going to break my chops?
Mm-hmm.
I don't send you the bill. Now, Mr. O'Rourke wants to tax them. Okay, that's just the Catholics. How about the Jews? How about the Muslims? How about the Christians? How about people of goodwill,
right,
who also feel that marriage is between a man and a woman?
And it's not hateful to take that position.
Absolutely not. And you are going to outright punish us?
Well, that's what he said. That's the way him and by the way, Julian Castro. By the way, I superficially looked up both of them because I was curious. They're both, I think, self-identified Roman Catholics. Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro.
That doesn't shock me.
Well, it doesn't shock me. What shocks me is that their bishop doesn't drop the hammer on them. Okay.
Well, that's another story.
We live in the Northeast. I bet you our bishop, if they heard some of the things Joe and I said, they dropped the hammer on us. Not that we listen. But the thing is, but Beto O'Rourke, in other words, and Julian Castro, in other words, they're coming out. They're coming out, and the way they're phrasing it is, we're not going to reward hate. What did Joe and I say? What do we say ad nauseum on this show? And I do want to talk about one of the people that was at this non-heterosexual town hall, whatever you want to call it, and we'll get into that person in a second. A black transgendered. Again, I'm sorry. It's a man dressed like a woman. But this, all you religious people out there, get it through your head. They're telling you that your church, your synagogue, the local church down the street, or the Archdiocese in New York, you're going to have to start paying property tax on all the property you own. You're going to have to start paying a tax, maybe not on the direct charitable contributions of the faithful. I don't know about that, but certainly look at the Catholic Church. Look at all the land that the church owns, particularly in New York City. The property at St. Patrick's alone has to be hundreds of millions of dollars.
And many people actually feel this way, that they should be taxed. But what I'm telling you is this: what you don't see underneath it is all. I could just speak for the Catholic Church because I'm Catholic and I know what they do, and I've been involved in Catholic charities for many, many, many years. At no cost to you, they provide a service to the country. I could speak for New York. I used to work with the Missionaries of Charity for many years before I got married. It's zero cost to the city. They're providing shelter. They're taking care of old people.
Well, here, let me ask you a question.
I mean,
Joe brought this up before. It makes
no sense.
Here's one of the questions I would ask Beto O'Rourke if he ever, he's not getting the nomination, but if he was ever in a place where I'm able to get up there and ask a question, I said, who takes care of the dying AIDS patients, homosexuals and drug addicts down in the West Village? Okay, who takes care of them while they're dying, gives them their medication, bathes them, feeds them, prays for them? The Missionaries of Charity. That's the Catholic Church, Beto. What do you do for gay people when they're dying of AIDS? What do you do, Mr. Rich Boy with a silver spoon in your mouth? You do nothing.
University.
All right? Yeah, all your Ivy League and everything else. You do nothing. And you know nothing about what the Catholic Church does in this world and how it helps gay people, all sorts of people who, yes, might be living a sinful lifestyle, but the church's arms of mercy are open to them, particularly when they're dying. Where are you? Nowhere to be found when these people are dying. And you're the one encouraging them. And people like you are encouraging these people to live this life. We're going to say it again. You hate these people, Beto. You hate these people. Joe and I in the Catholic Church love these people. All right? That's the difference between us and you.
And then, again, we've talked about this too in the past, how, like, our government has basically attacked nuns that take care of the little sisters of the poor. They take care of indigent old people.
And where would those people be?
They'd be on the street or dead.
Right.
And you're going to break their chops? Why?
Because they have to fulfill their political they have to fulfill their political agenda. They cannot. Why did Obama not carve out an exception for them? Because he could have politically. He could have. But remember, the left leaves no stone unturned. They can't have a law that requires private businesses, for-profit businesses, to have to go along with, let's say in this case, Obamacare. Okay, he's got to get everybody. And when the church says, Dolan did at the time, when he was my hero at the time, and he said, no way, President Obama, no way, we're not going to let you do this, okay? Because, you can do what you want to, let's say, for-profit businesses if that's what you're going to do as a lawmaker, but you're not going to do this to us. And I applauded it. So the thing is, it's just enough to it just makes you shake your head. It makes you shake your head. I'm surprised. And one of the reasons why we're opening our mouth as much as we are, and another reason why our audience is growing, is because we're here to say, not a chance, Beto. And it ain't going to be Beto. We're going to get into Elizabeth Warren in a second. It's probably going to be her because Biden's star is dropping like a rock.
He's done.
All right, he's done. Donald Trump's going to eat his lunch over the next few months, and Biden's going to be out of the race. Bernie Sanders is just too old, and because of his heart problems, I'm not saying this in a negative way towards him. The base isn't going to vote for him because they feel like he's too old and perhaps maybe even too sick. He can't survive the rigors of the Democratic primary and then have to go into the buzzsaw known as Donald Trump. So who's this going to fall on? Elizabeth Warren.
Most likely.
Elizabeth Warren. So the thing is, we have to be able to tell the Elizabeth Warrens of this world, absolutely not. You're not coming after our church. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, and I don't care how judgmental it, and I know Joe backs me up on this. If you're a Roman Catholic and you vote for any of these people, God help you. They're attacking you, They don't care. They don't care that you partially agree with them because you're a pro-choice Catholic or you're a pro-gay Catholic or whatever the case may be. They don't care about that. If you don't toe the line with them on every single thing, okay, you are their enemy. So why don't you get that through your head? And if you do vote for them, like I said, I'm sorry how judgmental that sounds, but no Catholic can vote, no religious person in general. But from a Catholic point of view, you cannot vote for these people.
I got news for you. If you work in a union, they're going to take your medical insurance.
That's right.
Because they want it to be a Medicare for all. That includes union labor, by the way.
Yeah, not just little sisters of the poor.
So they're coming for you too. So if you shut your eyes and pull that lever, at least know what you're voting for. Because you can't carve out for all of the unions and be able to afford a Medicare for all plan.
And without
you can't even afford it anyway.
And without outraging a lot of other people. Why did the unions
But that's, again, sometimes it's sadly, and I don't mean this because I'm not the smartest person in the world, believe me, it's low information voting. It's sad. People don't think. You have to think about what your vote means and how it applies to a broader perspective. This is not a game. These people are dangerous, and we're going to talk about that in a second, which Joe talked about in the last segment, how Elizabeth Warren is applauding a young boy, a young girl, who basically says, my name is Jacob, and I'm a 9-year-old transgender American.
Hold on. Applaud. Thunderous applause.
I'll be honest with you, I'm appalled. I can't, by the way, 20 years ago, those parents are in prison. 20 years ago, everyone on that stage, that's political suicide. 20 years ago.
Right.
Oh, but now we're enlightened and we're progressive.
Well, remember one point I want to make while you're about to make that. Barack Obama in this field, with his positions that he had in 2008, would not get the Democratic nomination. In 2008, because he was against gay marriage. Remember, his first term, he had.
I didn't know that.
He had. You know who the only president who's ever been sworn in his first term that's been, let's say, for gay marriage, for lack of a better, is Donald Trump, which is one of the problems I have with Trump. Okay, but Donald Trump has almost like a libertarian approach to gay marriage. I don't think he really cares either way.
Indifferent.
Yeah, I think he's indifferent. But he said, like I got no problem with two men marrying. I'm not quoting him directly. But Barack Obama would have a hard time in this Democrat field running on the positions he ran on in 2008.
But this is even, forget about religion. This is a person of goodwill, people of goodwill, adults that have children, adults that basically frankly, know better. You're going to say to a 9-year-old girl, you should mutilate your body and take chemicals to transition into the opposite sex, and you're going to applaud their parents, as in their people of courage, to encourage a 9-year-old? That is, I can't even wrap my arms around.
Right.
I can't even, frankly, I can't even believe that you would go public with that. Frankly, from a political perspective, I think it's suicide, because the average person in this country, the average man and woman across the nation, from New Jersey to Montana to Arizona to Arkansas, is sitting there and has the exact same feeling that I do.
Now, maybe they're not as vocal as we are. Maybe they're not on
They're
front
like,
line
are
with
you
Joe and Joe.
out of your mind?
But when they're having the conversations that Joe and I are having
At
with
their
you all
kitchen table.
at their kitchen table, they're saying, honey, I just watched something last night that truly, truly disturbed me. Okay. And they were referring to what Joe and I are referring to as the presented by CNN Democrat non-heterosexual town hall fiasco that occurred the other night. But I did want to make a point to pick up on what you just said. Across the board, everybody who I've watched since then, I'm sorry, I have to admit it to you, I cannot watch that so-called town hall. Even the highlights, the outrageous highlights, made me physically sick to my stomach, and I don't have thin skin. I could listen to people, but it was such insanity that I was like, I can't listen to this. But what I did do was I watched some others. So I watched The Blaze. I haven't watched Ben Shapiro in a while, but he chimed in on this, which he got in trouble for, because just to digress for a second, Ben Shapiro said, if you come into my house to teach my child that nonsense, you're only leaving me one of two choices, and one of those choices is to shoot you, Beto O'Rourke. That's what he said. I'm not saying I'm for that.
That's crazy.
But no. But what he said was no. But what his larger point was that if you as the state come into my home to tell me that you're going to take my child away because I'm teaching my child religious values, let's say in this case the values of the Jewish religion, which, let's face it, on the moral level are parallel with the moral values that the Catholic Church espouses. Okay, he was being a little hyperbolic, but he got all kinds of, Ben Shapiro is going to shoot Beto O'Rourke. Okay, he was trying to say what he would do to defend his children, with the notion that this is something we need to defend our children from.
We defend it with voting. And frankly, I mean, if it ever came to that, that's when you go off the grid.
Well, we'd be in a civil war if it ever came to that.
I mean, if it ever came to that, I would wind up living off the grid. You know, that's when you go live in like Montana, off the grid, where nobody cares about it.
Well, listen, but by the same token, you're talking about people trying to pass federal legislation, or would want to, either by executive order or pass federal legislation through the Congress. So you can't even hide out in Montana. But I wanted to bring up something to you, because I think it's getting overlooked as a funny moment, and I don't see it as being funny at all. And you all can chime in and tell me what you think. But before I make the point, I just want to point out that Eddie joined us, Sue joined us, Joe Campo over in Brooklyn, PM is with us. And PM, we'll get back to Columbus another time. We're way into the breach. I got your point. We'll talk about it more. Jonathan Ross, HolyFaith Media is joining. Suzanne's joining in, and a whole bunch of others. Too long to go into. But I do want to make a point, and I think it's because it was brought up as almost a funny point, like I said, and I don't think there's anything funny about it, because remember something. Let's just set the stage here a little bit. CNN is the producer. Okay, the stage is this debate stage. The audience are all plants. Okay, every single one of them. There's not one person who's going to disagree with anything said on that stage that's in that audience. And the players, in this case, the presidential nominees, have all been fed their lines. My point is, I learned a long time ago in directing class, when I took a directing class, film directing class at Seton Hall University. When the one thing about a director is everything you see on the screen, the director is responsible for. And why I bring that up is everything we saw on that stage the other night, the people who are directing it, in this case CNN, all right, everything is there deliberately. Now, having said that, I don't believe anything is by mistake. There was, I think it was one of the other announcers who looked like a transvestite, his or herself, who was on the stage, introduced Shay Diamond. Okay, now go look this up.
Yeah,
okay,
I read about
Shay Diamond, who is a black man dressed as a black woman. okay, and dressed with this big hat, whatever, okay.
Studs in his face.
Yeah, and the first thing that he says is, "My name's Shia," and I just wanted to correct you on that. Now here's where I'm going with this. And then he turns around and he says, "To misgender a person is an act of violence." That got a laugh, a chuckle out of the audience. Most people laughed at it. And I'm here to say, from the front line with Joe and Joe, that could be the most dangerous statement uttered at that whole non-heterosexual town hall conference that the Democrats had presented by CNN. Okay, because I want to tell you why. And I want you, really, I'm not telling you, I want you to tell me if you disagree with me. And all of you, I want you to tell me if you disagree with me. If somebody commits an act of violence against you, okay, and let's say you're walking on the street in New York City and somebody perpetrates an act of violence on you, and in the process of defending yourself, you beat the hell out of that person, okay? You're not going to be, in other words, if you're defending yourself, you're not going to go to jail, right? You go up in front of the judge and say, no, somebody else started it, you defended yourself, you're totally within your rights to do that. The left is trying to redefine words. We had a whole segment, we had a whole show on free speech last week, okay? And what words can or cannot mean, what words do mean, what they don't mean, and now it's gotten to the point where words are going to be classified as violent under the law. See, this is what CNN, the oligarchs, everybody on that stage, everybody in the audience, this is what they want. What does this mean? This means if you, let's say for argument's sake, are a person who, and I saw this with my own eyes, so I'm not making this up. If you're a bathroom attendant, okay, let's say a female African bathroom attendant, okay, in a nice restaurant, and a woman who looks exactly like a guy, because is dressed exactly like a guy, is approaching the doors to both the men's room and the women's room, and you innocently, this African woman is to say, I'm sorry, the men's room's over here, as this man is about to go into the ladies' room and says, the men's room's over here. And that person, in this particular instance I'm talking about, it ended with the person making a complaint to the manager, blah, blah, blah. But here's my point about violence. They're going to justify that woman who thinks that she's a guy and dressed like a guy, punching that African woman in the face. And the justification is for it is going to be what this Shia Diamond said. You've done violence to me.
Well, as we all know, we covered this last week.
That's what I'm saying.
$250,000 fine in the city of New York.
Well, that's for illegal alien, and also if you misgender,
say what's your pronoun or whatever the heck that is. Right now, you could be fined $250,000 in New York City.
In New York City. But my point is now, aside from the financial impact that it could have, now it could get to, and in my view, they're planting the seed for violent reaction. And when they can't point or describe to a judge how they reacted violently to violence, they're going to try to redefine it in the law to say, no, language is violence. They called me a man and I'm a woman. In the meantime, it's a biological male. Therefore, I was justified in beating the hell out of that guy on the street. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to soften us up for the violence that they would like to perpetrate, and knowing that we, as in Joe and I, in my case, we're not hitting anybody. We're not beating up anybody, okay? What do? What are they going to do? Because they can't make us hit them. So what do? They're now going to redefine what speech is, and they're going to define it as if you say something that's legally protected, by the way, under the First Amendment, that they don't like, they're going to say, you did violence to me, just like this Shia Diamond did. We're committing violence on him now, simply by pointing this out, you know.
I'll be honest with you, I'd rather get beat up than get fined $250,000.
So what I'm saying, Joe, is they're going to...
I'll be honest with you.
But they're going to get
I'd rather get beat up.
They're going to get a judge to take their side, Joe, is my point.
It's just, things have gotten so twisted. And I really think we have to take a step back. In all fairness, if you are a registered Democrat, I really think, and I'm just saying this objectively, I think we have to take a step back. Things have gotten completely insane, and you should demand it, frankly. Whether you don't want to vote Republican, you don't like Donald Trump, fine, I could respect that. But things have gotten completely off track. Mm-hmm. And this is just a couple examples. And when you vote for them, this is what you're voting for. this is what you're voting for.
Right. I did forget my point before, but now I remember when I was talking about the other social media, like I got into Ben Shapiro and what he said, but what I meant to say was the analysis I saw right across the board, from everyone, Blaze, Ben Shapiro, others, is all the same. Ben Shapiro's point was that if the Democrats just ran a more centrist campaign from the beginning, okay, that they probably would beat Donald Trump. That was I think it's possible. I don't think that that's the case. But their safest bet, let's say we give him the benefit of the doubt, their safest bet would have been to run a more, even if they want to lurch to the left after they get elected, like Obama did, all right, but run somewhere in the middle. He said they just gave the RNC with this non-heterosexual town hall, CNN presented Democrat town hall, okay? They just gave the Republicans all the commercials they needed for 2020. Because somebody who was on that stage is going to be the nominee, whether it's Warren, whether it's Harris, whether it's Buttigieg, even that idiot Tom. Okay, I said I wasn't going to do that anymore. I take that back, and I mean that sincerely. We're not calling anybody names on the show anymore. Even that guy, that billionaire Tom Steyer, who we disagree with vehemently. If any one of the nominees is on that stage, okay, and I mean, there's this is what they have, and Ben Shapiro's point was they're making a mistake. They've made a mistake by doing this because this is going to give Republicans all the ammunition you need. Because like Joe said, if you're even a middle of the road person who could vote either Democrat or Republican, if you're in the Midwest somewhere where it's much less ideological out there, okay, and you're watching this, you're like this.
Exactly.
This is the face you got. You're looking at it going,
honey,
what did he just say?
I mean, I can't believe it. They have to really. I think we have to really take a step back. It's gone way too far. Yeah. It's gone way too far. I'm sorry. My opinion. It's just, who am I?
Well, you know what? You know who you are? You're one half of the front line with Joe and Joe.
There it is.
That's who you are. And we're on Facebook Live, 8 o'clock every Sunday night. And we're on HolyFaith Media. Jonathan Ross is chiming in. We'd like to thank him and Joe Campo. Eddie's with us. Eddie said the CNN town hall is about as authentic as a cheesy reality show. You hit that one right on the head, Eddie. I mean, and literally, I do want to throw in one thing. What is it? Why does Beto O'Rourke? Why does he speak the way he does? Like, did somebody teach him this? In the Ivy League, it's like they ask him a question, and just like if you ask me a question and my answer is going to be yes, if I anticipate the question, I'm just going to go yes, right? He's like, yes, like he struggles to say everything, and
I think
you will lose your tax exempt status. Yes, you will, because you don't support full civil rights. Like he struggles to say, and that's a bad impersonation. But the struggling part, I think I have that right. He struggles with every single word he says.
I think he's trying to be like Barack Obama, when Barack Obama, who was trying to be like Martin Luther King. And that's what I think.
I didn't connect those dots, but now that you have,
that's what I think.
I'm with Joe on this one. And by the way, just so you all know, I was on a Catholic men's retreat this weekend talking to a good priest friend of ours, and we were talking, and I'm being serious for a minute. Joe and I don't want to be disrespectful. We know we're bombastic, but we don't want to be disrespectful. In good conscience, and I was talking to this with our priest friend. I said I can't call this group. Let's call it this group, the LGBT community. I don't identify them that way. I don't really care how they identify themselves. We don't, but at the same time, Joe and I, believe it or not, are respectful men. And that's why from now on, and you might have heard so far in the conversation, we're referring to that whole group from here on in as non-heterosexuals. That's how I believe they identify. However they identify, they're not identifying as heterosexual.
That's a $250,000.
That's a $250,000 fine if I say that in New York City. But from now on, that group, and again, there's a lot of commentators out there. They call them the LMNOP community. And again, I'm not begrudging those guys. Joe and I will now refer to this movement in America, this violent movement, soon to be violent, if not violent already, and completely insane movement, as the non-heterosexual movement in America.
Well, let's keep it moving. We got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of good stuff coming at you. We're going to go to the New Orleans Saints. This week, linebacker Demario Davis will not be fined after all for wearing a headband with the words "Man of God." Why do I say that? Because last week Davis announced on Instagram that he had been fined $7 grand for violating the NFL's blanket prohibition against wearing personal messages with their uniforms. You know where I'm going to go with this now. Now, obviously, the NFL didn't take such a stance against Colin Kaepernick in 2017. Clearly, what he was doing was what's it called?
It was provocative.
Absolutely.
Everyone say
I mean,
provocative.
at one point, I could remember
Controversial.
Controversial is a good word. I could remember at one point he had socks with cops dressed as pigs being shot.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was he compelled to take those off?
I don't recall.
I don't think he was.
You know, a couple of things. One, what's wrong with the man of God? I understand you have a policy. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you're going to have a policy, don't you think it should be consistent? You know, it sickens me when I saw this story, how what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Irregardless of how you feel about Colin Kaepernick's right to kneel for the national anthem. Irregardless, wearing socks depicting a cop as a pig being shot is wrong.
That's right. That's right.
And that is confrontational.
Right.
No fine. Now,
No fine, no nothing from the NFL.
Here is a man that's saying, man of God.
Right. All sorts of controversy.
What is the problem?
Right. What's the problem? And
what is going on here?
And you hit the nail on the head. If there's rules, there's rules. You hear that, Roger Goodell? If there's rules about private expression, then there's rules, which means you need to make Colin Kaepernick take those socks off, compel him to stand for the national anthem, okay? And if you're not going to do that, when the Dallas Cowboys, a team I don't like, and I am very happy to say my New York Jets got the first win again today, okay? I don't like the Cowboys, but I certainly in my heart was sympathetic towards that city and those players. After the Dallas police officers got shot a couple years ago, but was it 7 of them died? 5 or 7 of them died? And the Dallas Cowboys wore on their cleats an emblem of DPD, Dallas Police Department, and we were forced to take that off. This man, Demario Davis, former New York Jet, Demario Davis, is that his name? Right?
Yeah.
Right. I got it right. Demario Davis is wearing a headband that says, "I'm a man of God." You see how idolatrous, by the way, just to digress for 1 second, our country's become. With that, if it was said Nike and he was getting paid for it, that'd be fine. But it said, "I'm a man of God," and that's a problem.
It shows their politics.
Exactly, like you said,
it shows their hand.
They pick and choose their outrage.
It's actually sad.
It is.
It's really sad.
Well, Roger Goodell's a joke.
Oh my gosh, it's sad.
Guy's totally in the tank for the left. He basically like we're illustrating, right? We didn't make this up. God and DPD on your cleat gets taken away. Kneeling for the national anthem or wearing socks that show depicting cops as pigs getting shot, that's okay. And that falls under, Joe, what did we talk about last week? Freedom of speech, which none of us have. And you know who doesn't champion freedom of speech, even though they say it? The NFL.
But the thing is, if you have the policy, which you had, then enforce it across the board. And I could live with it then. And that's why I bring it up. You're not. You're clearly pushing an agenda.
Right.
You clearly are. I'm sorry. And frankly, like I said, what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. This is why we have this show. Forget about politics. What's wrong has become right. We're raising kids in this country. What's going to happen to the next generation when you're feeding them this garbage?
Right. And they don't know how to cope with life because we, those of us who, I'm not going to include Joe and I in that. We don't remain silent. And obviously, you good people don't remain silent. All the people out there that remain silent, or like we said earlier, lukewarm, okay, I wouldn't want to be you if you're lukewarm. You allow this to happen. When all of you lukewarm people look back at history and wonder, well, how did that happen? Or how it was people like you that allowed it to happen. It was people like you who didn't speak out against the slave trade. It was people like you who didn't speak out against the Nazis the way Dietrich Bonhoeffer did. It's people like you who say, just leave me alone. I just want to go to work, make my money, raise my kids. They're not allowing you to raise your kids. Don't you get our point? Look at this debacle that they did the other night with these Democrats. Look at this, and then it shows you what they think about you and your kids. What did Jesus say? He said, go out into the deep water. Okay, which Joe and I really are trying to do. Guess what, all you lukewarm people? The deep water has now come to you. You've been sitting in the shallow water thinking you don't have to worry about the deep water. Well, now it's come to you. And they're coming after your children. What are you going to do then? Are you going to blame the Catholic Church? You're not going to blame the Catholic Church for this one. Because regardless of the problems in the Catholic Church is the ones trying to stand up against this stuff. Who are you going to blame? Go look in the mirror. When your kid comes home and says, when your 12-year-old boy comes home and says, Mommy, Daddy, teacher told me there's no such thing as boys or girls. I want to be a fly on the wall to see what your response is going to be. Mr. and Mrs. Lukewarm. That's what I would love to see what your response is going to be. The war has come to you. They have brought it to you. You cannot be lukewarm anymore or sit on a fence. You have to choose a side. You have to.
Couldn't have been said better.
This is a war, and everybody needs to get it through their head. It is a cultural battle. It is a cultural war. You have to choose a side. And I dare say that a lot of these people at the non-heterosexual CNN Democrat town hall, okay, would really go running for the hills, because I do believe, again, I know I went off on a little bit, I do believe a lot of those people in the middle, let's call them lukewarm, wouldn't be so lukewarm, and they would really, at the end of the day, what they need is their conscience
Joe,
raised.
they're not lukewarm. They've actually chosen a side. Everyone in that debate, side is against us. I got news for you. They would put us in a camp if they could.
Yeah.
Don't you think that they would arrest us in a minute?
Second.
If they could, if the law did not prevent them from doing it, like if the law was in a second.
But that's why I mentioned to you about this. About this man who thinks he's a woman, this Shia or Shay, whoever it is. That's what I mean about when they're trying to plant the seed for violence. You've just committed violence against me, which gives them, in their mind, license to commit violence against you. So like Joe said, you could be lukewarm, okay? You could sit there and sit on the fence, okay? But soon as you mistakenly refer somebody who's a he as a she, or vice versa, or whatever mistake you make, okay, be prepared that either you're going to get fined in New York City $250,000, or they're going to punch you in the face and justify it by saying you perpetrated violence against me. Or they put you in a camp.
By the way, history, 20th century, I'm going to refer to two regimes, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and also the communists after the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They arrested you for nothing.
Nothing.
Zero. And you disappeared. Soviet Union in 4 decades killed 66 million people.
Right.
Under Lenin's ideas.
Right.
Carried through from Stalin. For nothing.
For nothing.
So this is something that can happen. This is seriously, this is historic.
Well, that's one of the biggest things, examples of arrogance in America. Like we as Americans, we have this arrogance. Oh, that could never happen here. Who are you kidding? Rome lasted 1,000 years. Rome was the light of the world at one point in many people's eyes, okay? A high civilization in terms of human history, okay? They lasted 1,000 years. They fell for the same reasons that we're falling right now. The same exact reasons we're falling right now, all right? Most of which has to do, as again, our priest friend mentioned this weekend when I was on retreat, was lack of manhood. That Romans emphasized the natural role that men had, and that's what made Rome great. But then at one point they basically abandoned that, and Rome fell. But my larger point was that the arrogance of Americans to think if it can happen to the Roman Empire, what makes you think it can't happen here? We've only been around 200 years.
But I think also people, especially, and again, I'm appealing to all people who are, basically registered Democrats. This is not the Democratic Party of your Irish grandfather.
No.
This is not the Democratic Party of your Italian grandfather that worked in a factory. This is not that party anymore. They have abandoned those people. You see, that's the sad reality. Too many people are not thinking about the issues. They're not thinking past their own hand.
Right.
This is a dangerous party right now. Dangerous.
And it's on display. It's not like they're even hiding it, Joe.
It's on
display for everybody to see.
It's embraced. This is just going to show, it's showing how far our culture has gone. People, and these are educated people, many people who are embracing it. It's scary. It should scare people. It scares me.
I did want to ask you.
As a father of 3.
Well, of course, and it absolutely should. Eddie made a point earlier about, I guess he was alluding to the traditional way Democrats usually, and Republicans do it too. They appeal to the base in the primaries and then pivot towards the middle during the general. With this town hall, getting back to what Ben Shapiro said about how they just gave the Republicans all the ammo they needed. Let's say the nominee is Elizabeth Warren. How on earth, how on God's green earth is she going to pivot from where she is now when they start showing those people in Iowa, Nebraska, in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, in those all-important states that Donald Trump won and is going to win again? He was in Minnesota this week. And last time I checked, Trump played his cards pretty well in the last election. If he's in Minnesota, he thinks he can win. When in Minnesota and Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the Republicans are running ad after ad after ad of Elizabeth Warren going, "Hi, Jacob. Oh, good for you. You were a girl. Now you're a boy." How's she going to pivot to the middle? How's she going to pivot to the middle? I want to know. What is she going to do? Say now all of a sudden she's not in favor of universal health care? All of a sudden she is okay with school choice? She can't do any of that. They have. This was actually more of a question for you. How they do know that these are all losing issues for them. What is their end? Do you see? I don't see an end game.
This is why Tom
That's why I'm asking.
As the chairman of the DNC, I've been saying this for years, should have been fired. He was handpicked by Obama to kind of carry on his legacy. Frankly, they don't understand the pulse of the country.
You said that on our first show, on our very first show. Joe said Tom Perez is the worst thing that happened to the Democratic Party. If this is his doing, and the people that are in his closest circle, if this is their strategy, he's the biggest loser I've ever seen in my life.
What's going to be telling, and we're kind of digressing, and we'll get back to it, and I don't think Warren will beat Trump. I could be wrong. I don't think she's going to. When she does lose, what will be telling is if they don't do or do not clean house with all leadership. We know Pelosi will go, but is Schumer shipped out? Is Tom Perez shipped out?
Or Joe,
and do they come back to the middle in reality?
What happened in 1992? Let's take just a quick walk down memory lane. Okay, the Democrats had George. Let's just go back to let's say post Nixon. The Democrats had Jimmy Carter, disaster, right? Then Reagan beat Carter. Then Reagan beat Mondale, killed Mondale in that election, destroyed him. Papa Bush destroyed Michael Dukakis. In that meantime, nobody in the Democratic side looked at Michael Dukakis and thought this guy could actually win the election, and he got destroyed. Okay. To their credit, Bill Clinton and Sam Nunn and others in the South. Okay, this is when somebody would have actually thought Bill Clinton was a moderate, but anyway, they created the Democratic Leadership Council, and they had to refashion some of their traditional positions that the liberal Mondale and the liberal ACLU supporting Michael Dukakis, okay, and Jimmy Carter, who at one point was thought of as a moderate, turned out to be a liberal disaster, and they actually regrouped, but they had to change or modify some of their positions, knowing that the American people were not going to listen. Bill Clinton is the one, now we don't agree with it, but Bill Clinton is one, I'm pro-choice, but I want abortions to be safe, legal, and rare. They obviously don't have any pretense of that anymore.
If he said that now in the Democratic convention,
they throw him out.
They boo him off the stage.
Because this is fully, now this has come to its fulfillment, okay? This has been going on for 50 years with some ups and downs for everybody to know. This is the fulfillment of every leftist dream is the Democratic Party as it is right now. They embrace every single radical position you could think of. Whether it's abortion up to the moment of birth, whether it's gone beyond, look, this town hall proves this has gone beyond two men marrying each other. You got 9-year-old kids who are saying, I'm an 9-year-old American transgender.
I can't even.
This is the fulfillment of what they wanted. And Joe's right. What are they going to moderate? What positions are they going to have to work on when Trump trounces Elizabeth Warren and her running mate Pete Buttigieg? Because that's probably what's going to happen.
I would agree.
All right. What are they going to moderate? They've already gone so far to the left. The only way they can moderate is the more moderate voices in the Democratic Party, if there are any, okay, left, who haven't been told to lead by Tom Perez, okay? How are they going to retake this party? Now, I, for one, would love to see the death of the Democratic Party. Not physical death, just the death of a party.
All they should be talking about is, if I had his job, healthcare, prescription drugs. That's it.
And you still might not win.
That's all I talk about.
But your best shot is to talk about actual issues instead of trotting out Jacob who is a confused young girl
with parents who should be in prison.
That woman, by the way, just as one finer point on that, that woman needs to go to jail. To me, and in fact, in the old days, she would have gotten a backhand. Okay, now we're not advocating backhanding anybody, but when I saw her smiling at little Jacob, okay, this confused girl, and she's smiling like a proud mother, you want to just say, woman, you really just need to, you need a backhand. All right, and you need to wake up. If that's what it's going to take to wake you up, you need to be woken up.
She needs like an old Italian woman to like smack her.
See, that's the thing. Not a man to do it. Okay.
She needs like an old Italian woman to be like, "What's the matter with you?
Right.
What's the matter with you?"
Yeah. Why are you telling the younger girl she's a younger boy? Look, she's a beautiful girl. And then the old Italian lady with her arthritic hands comes over and goes,
"What's the matter with you?
Wake up."
That's who needs to smack.
And that should be on video, and that would get 1 billion views on YouTube and put a lot of money in our pockets if that happened. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Russinello. Just got done talking about the atrocity, which was the CNN presented Democrat town hall for non-heterosexual people and candidates. No, I guess the candidates aren't, except people who cheat.
So we're going to move along.
And Kamala Harris's pronouns are she, her, and hers.
There it is.
All right.
We got 2 more good segments. This one's also in Louisiana. Very interesting, which we came across this week. The Supreme Court is taking up a very controversial case. Basically, the case is June Medical Services, LLC versus Glee. Basically, what it is, in Louisiana, there's an act. It's called Act 620, and it requires, makes sense to me, just being objective, but you can decide. It basically requires abortion centers to make arrangements for admitting women to hospitals within 30 miles in cases of life-threatening complications. Makes sense to me. A similar piece of legislation was in Texas in 2016. That case was Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt, and it was defeated. Basically, what they were saying is they were putting an undue burden on women. Basically, and the argument in Louisiana is one of the arguments, because I want to present both sides so you could decide for yourself, because I want to be fair. Basically, what they're saying is only 1 clinic in the whole state will remain open if this law was to stay on the books.
Can I ask you a question? So if there's more abortion clinics in Louisiana, but they're not within 30 miles of a hospital, which means the woman is in danger, that means the woman's health is at risk because of that atrocious procedure she went in to get, then she's what, just out of luck?
By the way, in New York, a doctor does not have to perform an abortion legally. You do not have to have a doctor in the clinic to perform an abortion, and you can have an abortion up to the day before you have the child.
Doesn't sound like too much of a back alley to us.
I mean, not for nothing. Does that sound safe? This to me sounds like this is not saying that abortion is illegal.
Right.
I actually think this is protecting women. This is just me.
Well,
I'm against abortion. Let's be clear. But this, to me, sounds like it's pro-woman, not.
Well, right, but you got to remember something. We said this. Okay. Now let's just go on for a second. This is important because, like Joe said, the Texas law was struck down by the Supreme Court. That was in 2016. We're only in 2019, and this current Supreme Court, has agreed to hear this case. That means that they're inclined to do something about it or see something wrong in the prior decision, or else why would they want to see it?
Absolutely.
They would just say, we settled this three years ago. And Joe makes a very good point. This is what people really need to get through their head about this whole idea of women's health and this health and safety of women and protecting women's health. This bill protects a woman's health. Now, if she unfortunately walks into a Planned Parenthood, okay, that means if they butcher her, which many times happen. I told you 13 ambulances over the last year have gone down to Planned Parenthood on Bleecker Street in New York City, very clandestinely. They don't want anybody to know about it. 13 ambulances, but there's a hospital close by. You're in New York City. If you're in rural Louisiana and a woman goes in for an abortion, the next nearest hospital is 100 miles away. Guess what? That woman could die in that 100 miles.
Easily.
Okay, so what's the problem?
And that's why the bill came up.
And whose fault is it, by the way, if there's only one abortion clinic left? That's Planned Parenthood's fault.
Well,
so what?
Enough.
So what?
And again, this is coming from why this case is being heard in Louisiana, because this is, again, disagree with me if you like. The health secretary of the state has said Louisiana abortion clinics have a history of serious health and safety problems. So this is why they put this law forward, to protect women.
Right, to say a hospital needs to be
within
nearby.
30 miles.
It's very, see, Planned Parenthood, are you listening?
But you see, they're such ideologues.
Exactly.
They don't care
Well,
about women.
Well, this is chipping away at abortion rights. It's protecting a woman's life after your butchers get done with them, which happens in Planned Parenthood all the time, which is never reported about in the mainstream media. But like when we're going to talk with Father Imperato on Wednesday, and we're going to do an interview with him, we're going to bring this up about the lies. Because Father Imperato, like I said, if Joe and I are in the breach, Father is storming the machine gun nest. He knows all about them in and out, and we're going to bring this up. They endanger women's health. They do it, and they show it in a case like this. They're endangering women's health. They're telling the woman in rural Louisiana, walk into that abortion clinic. But if something goes wrong, baby, it's on you. That's what they're saying.
And by the way, if you're pulling the lever for these people, this is what you're supporting.
That's right.
This is what you, listen, there are things that we could debate. We could debate how to handle the border. We could debate the economy.
Mm-hmm.
We could debate healthcare.
Taxes.
We could debate taxes. We could debate schools. All fair game. This is a game breaker.
That's right.
I could respect you more if you said, listen, I can't vote for the Republicans, but I can vote for this, so therefore I'm not going to vote. This is the stuff that these folks are supporting, and when you vote for them, you are supporting it too.
Right, and people need to get that. And what they'll say, their argument, well, you supported Donald Trump, and look at all the things he's done. You know what? Donald Trump doesn't support the culture of death. That's the bottom line. For Joe and I, that's why we voted for him for judges. He supports constitutional judges, and he told the United Nations thugs right to their face that countries should not be forced to change their policies when it comes to protecting human life. Okay, Donald Trump's got a lot of flaws. I mentioned earlier he might be the first president that has ever gotten inaugurated that supported gay marriage. There's a lot of problems I have with Donald Trump. Okay, but the bottom line is I can, in my prudential judgment, because of what he's done. Again, this is not a guess anymore. Because of what he has done with judges, not what he says he's going to do, what he has done with 150 constitutional judges, constitutional originalist judges that he's gotten on the courts, okay, and his outspoken defense of human life, trying to defund Planned Parenthood, changing the Mexico City policy and reversing that, and a whole host of other things. You want to know what? It's not even close. It's not even close. Trump supports a culture of life. The Democrats support a culture of death. And they support, what would you call the word that they're doing to little Jacob? Exploiting this little girl who refers to herself as Jacob. They're exploiting this little girl. That's the party you want to vote for? I don't think so.
I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to tell you.
I want to end the show on a positive note.
Is there anything positive going on in this country?
I think this was. Last week at the Dallas Cowboy game, there was a shot. The Dallas Cowboys were playing the Green Bay Packers. There was a shot of Ellen DeGeneres in a box, speaking and laughing with George W. Bush.
Okay.
And this is how it played out. As soon as the camera focused in on the two of them sitting there enjoying the game, laughing and talking, immediately Twitter messages went viral. Quick to shame Miss DeGeneres for spending time with the former conservative president. And to her credit, on Monday on her show, this is what she said. And I want to read it to you. She said, during the game, they showed a shot of George and me laughing together. And so people were upset. They thought, why is a gay Hollywood liberal sitting next to a conservative Republican president? Here's the thing, my friends, with George Bush. Here's the thing. I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. We're all different. And I think we have forgotten that. That's okay, that we're all different. Good for you, Miss DeGeneres. I applaud you. Beautiful sentiment. Wonderful. A message that we need to hear. Couple stats, because that's what I do. Couple stats. 1 in 6 Americans have reported that they've either stopped talking to a close friend or family member over the 2016 presidential outcome. Also, The country has developed a sick addiction to deem people with different political beliefs as less than human and not worth listening to, perhaps even deplorable. This is a dangerous sentiment. This is when you deem someone less than human, the next step is to eliminate them. That's what we did to slaves. That's what we did. That's what Germany did to Jews.
That's what Stalin did to his political opponents.
Yes, they did. They were not human. That's what we're doing now.
Right. Well, what
in
is
this
it?
country, and I applaud Mr. Generous for coming out and saying that. Wonderful example. Wonderful.
I was actually because like we started the show with talking about, let's say, those who grovel like Chris Cuomo, a groveler, and who had to go and he had to go and give his mea culpas to the new Inquisition, which is the non-heterosexual movement in America. He had to go grovel and get back into their good graces because of a stupid joke. Ellen DeGeneres is sitting there having a good time watching a football game with a former president of the United States. Now, I don't like Barack Obama very much, okay? But if I was a famous guy and I met him somewhere and we actually started to have a conversation and he got to know me a little bit and I got to know him, I'm still going to think that he's in the dark when it comes to abortion and all these other things. That doesn't mean that I can't talk to the guy. Doesn't mean that I'm going to let conservatives tell me you can't talk to Barack Obama. I could talk to anybody, and I've shown that in my life. I'm not a 20-year-old kid. I'm a 52-year-old man. Most of the people I know in my life now who I consider friends do not agree with me on most things, particularly abortion and the non-heterosexual agenda and our views towards that. They love me. They know I'm not looking to hurt anybody, nor do I want to hurt anybody. They're not radical leftists, although I do disagree strongly with them, okay? And yes, I laugh with them. I joke with them. I work in many cases with them. I go out with them because they're my friends. Now, I still hold my view, and when I'm questioned on it, and Joe does the same thing, my views come out, okay? And I will say, I disagree, all right? And Ellen DeGeneres proved that you could do that on that, let's say more, I hate to use the word, elite level, a very high-powered Hollywood celebrity.
Absolutely.
And a former president of the United States. And what did the tolerant left do to her? They chastised her in public. Basically, it's like the scarlet letter. If they could have gotten a chance to put a big D on her chest, which would have stood for deplorable, because she sat there and she actually had a laugh with a former president of the United States.
Who, by the way, is a gentleman, whether you like him or not.
Everybody says that about him.
Is a gentleman.
You know.
I'll be honest with you. However you feel about his presidency, when he left the office, he kept his mouth shut. He could have said a lot.
Right.
Didn't say a word.
Right.
He is an absolute and utter gentleman.
My father told me that when Harry Truman lost the presidency, or when he after he lost to Eisenhower, right? He got in his car. He packed, literally. This is the president of the United States. He packed his car. He put Bess in the car and drove back to Missouri. And I think you heard from Harry Truman once after that before he died, which was years later. George Bush, I would say, thinking about it, did the exact same thing. He left the political scene. He served his 2 terms. He went down to Crawford, and he's now living the rest of his life. He's a very well-known person. People know him down there. He did own at one point, I think, a piece of one of the baseball teams. But nonetheless, he still is a celebrity to a degree. But as far as it goes, he doesn't, Joe said it right, he doesn't chime in on anything. He didn't come out and blast Obama, okay? He didn't come out and criticize Obama. His view was...
there was a lot to criticize.
There was a lot to criticize. George Bush kept his mouth shut. Joe said George W. Bush is a gentleman. Yes, he is. And you know who else has recognized that? Obviously, Ellen DeGeneres. And
who's gay and who's liberal.
Right. And who is a person who you probably could sit down and have a laugh with, and maybe even a reasonable conversation, even though she would know that others disagree with her lifestyle. She'll take her position that she was born that way or whatever, and there's somebody else who will argue the other point, but I bet it would be a civil conversation. But Ms. DeGeneres, you actually showed some character, okay, in not groveling and apologizing, and Joe and I applaud you for it. But understand something. This is where your party has gone. This is where the culture has gone. This is where the non-heterosexual community has gone. You must hate everybody who disagrees with the agenda. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to continue to stay on their hit list, not their literal hit
Because
list.
it's
You know what I
become
mean.
tribal. It's almost like a religion.
It is a religion.
It is a religion to people. The politics have become a religion, and it's a tribal mentality. They don't even listen. I like to think, listen, you could disagree with Joe and I on a lot of things. I like to think on some of them, actually I think on a lot of them, but maybe I'm being biased. We present an objective truth. Frankly, if you disagree with what we were talking about regarding that 9-year-old girl being introduced as a boy and applauding it, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. Frankly, obviously I'm not going to hate you, but I'll be truthful with you. I don't know what we could talk about. Like I don't know how you could have that conversation from an adult's perspective.
You can't.
I just can't. I can't see it. I'll pray for you. I'll be your friend.
Yeah.
But at the same time, from a logical adult perspective, I don't know how you could support that.
No.
I'm sorry.
You can't.
I don't know what to tell you.
If you think, if you're a person who thinks in your mind that you could remake what's naturally been made, a man or a woman, if you think you could do that, okay, then you're suffering from a disorder too, even if you don't suffer from that particular disorder. If you think that you could go against what God has made and change it through self-mutilation, really is what it is, when you agree to let a so-called doctor do all these things to you and hormone treatments and all that, if you really think that you could change the way we're made by nature, then there's something really wrong with you. There's something more wrong with you than there is little Jacob. Okay, little Jacob's confused, and according to Dr. McHugh, all right, will probably be one of the 80% of that very small group of people that will spontaneously grow out of that and wake up one day and say, I'm a girl.
Little Jacob can't do that now, because little Jacob probably is taking hormones.
Well, that was where I was going. I don't know that that's the case.
I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope not, but that's the whole point.
But that's why Dr. McHugh and others have said this is child abuse.
That's why the American Pediatric Association, has called that child abuse. Yet Elizabeth Warren is clapping for it. And all of those candidates are basically doing the same.
Can you imagine that in this country, if you're under the age of 17 or if you're under the age of 21 years old, you can't go to the liquor store and buy a beer?
You can't buy cigarettes.
You can't buy cigarettes, but you could go and mutilate your body without your, and in many cases, what's coming soon to a theater near you, is without your parents' consent, you could go and let a doctor mutilate you and start shooting you up with hormones. And we're not, and this country's not way upside down and in need of being turned right side up.
I'll just leave you with that thought from an objective perspective. Forget about your political tribe. Think about that till next week.
Yep.
Think about that. That is what this party is for. That's all I have to say.
No.
Forget that you're a Republican. Forget that you're a Democrat. Forget that you're an independent. Remember that you're a human being and you think about what we just said regarding that 9-year-old.
Yeah. And let's pray for that 9-year-old. And in the meantime, pray for all these people, because obviously, just like we are all, they are in desperate need of some help, and to have their minds, straightened out a little bit. But in the meantime, it was a conversation that needed to be had. We need to shed light on this CNN town hall thing that they did. And we encourage you all to go look at some of the lowlights. Can't even call them highlights. There's much more that was actually comical. Some of it was outright funny.
We could have talked about this for 5 hours.
Yeah, we could have talked about it for a long time. Again, it was a 7-hour diatribe, okay, of all people saying the same thing. And like I said, if you're out in the Midwest, you were probably watching it like this. Oh my God, Martha, did you see what that? It's probably nuts. But anyway, so we want to thank you all as always for joining us. Eddie, PM, Sue, my baby's out there. A lot of our fans that come by every week, and according to the number, it looks like a whole bunch more. So we want to thank you for joining us. Like we said, keep your eyes open on the Frontline page this week. We're going to be posting an interview probably later in the week that we're going to do on Wednesday with Father Stephen Imbarado, who's going to talk to us about the culture of death and what he's up against, in the culture war. and he's really deep.
And keep
into
in
the
mind,
culture
don't just because he's a Catholic priest. I think he's a very interesting person. Wait till you hear his story.
Yeah.
I think you'll find it to be very compelling. He's not your stereotypical, what I say, Catholic priest who became a priest at a young age. I think you'll find his story to be very compelling.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. He's a very interesting guy.
He's interesting in that way, of course, and yeah, he's really fighting the fight, and he's going to tell Joe and I and all of you what he's doing. So keep your eye on that. Say your prayers. We have some open lines of communication open with some people who are willing to put the front line with Joe and Joe on at least one right now that we know of. Very important channel down out in the Midwest, or Southern Midwest, in the South actually. So say your prayers that that's going to happen over the next week or two. And more people are listening to us. I went on a men's retreat this week, and a lot of the guys were saying, Joe, make sure you send me. They're not on Facebook or whatever. They're like, make sure you send me the link every week. I want to watch a show and spread it with our friends. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because we're spreading the truth, and we're doing that through our conversation, and our conversation is your conversation. Remember that, and that conversation that's going on everywhere. So we'll see you next week. We'll be here Sunday night, 8 o'clock on Facebook.
Thank you for listening.